I guess let's kind of start with some introductions. Since first one who started talking, hi, my name is Darko. I am what they call these days a developer advocate. I talk to you, talk to developers about building stuff on the cloud. I'm just here to support folks from the CDK team to kind of kick this one off, and I'm incredibly interested to see, how all this pans out and what you folks have to share, and to see a little bit of demos today. I guess moving it on to Pranita.
Hi, everyone. I'm the product manager for CDK, and I'm really excited for this first installment of community meetings. Off to Spot, or Tom Calloway, sorry.
Hi, folks. That's me. I'm Spot. I'm on the open source strategy marketing team here at AWS. Really excited about the opportunity to talk more about what we're doing in CDK with the broader community. I think that brings us back to you.
Back to me. Okay, cool. I guess let's kick this one off. Pranita, do you wanna start, or should we just start with the demos? Who will be doing the CDK toolkit demo?
That's going to be Momo. So I'll quickly start with,
please,
why we are here. The last year, we discussed a lot about how we can have the community more involved and give more power to our community. And there were a lot of ideas that we discussed. And after much deliberation and with the help of the open source team, we decided on this model of community meetings. It's lightweight, it's inclusive. We're doing 2 meetings every session to cover different time zones. So we just thought this would be a great platform for our avid CDK users to come on and provide us feedback, get demos from us, be able to demo cool things that they are building themselves. Today we have a community demo from Danny Steenman from the community as well. So we're pretty excited about kind of having this open forum to discuss and collaborate. We also have a survey. Because we're not going to get this perfect for some time. It would need a few installments. We have a survey to ask you for feedback on how this meeting could be the best use of your time. And I'll post a link on there pretty soon. The first demo, or just going over the agenda, we're going to have 30 minutes of demos from our developer team on AWS, on CDK. A lot of names you probably have seen on GitHub because all our devs are extremely interactive on GitHub. The first demo is going to be Momo, who's going to talk about our recent release on CDK toolkits. And the big ask from customers here was, how can we programmatically access CDK and make our pipelines more flexible, more powerful. And Momo, if you want to take over and share your screen and show us how folks can use this.
Hey everyone, welcome to the first demo today. I'm Momo. I'm Mr. Crane at the GitHub and the Slack channel. You might have seen me there. I'm here today to talk to you about the CDK toolkit library. So when I say toolkit library, what I mean is that the CDK, as you know it, has in our head 2 parts. There's the CDK toolkit, and then there's the construct library. Construct library is all the goodness of all of our L2s and L3 constructs. And then the toolkit is what we call all the things, the tools you need to deploy your CDK apps to CloudFormation and to maintain them and run them. So traditionally we had the CLI, or the CDK toolkit CLI. But people have asked us for a long time that they want programmatic access to those CLI commands. So they want to deploy from their code. So that's what the toolkit library is basically delivering. A while ago, like 2 years ago or something, we had a release that we called CLI lib alpha, which was the first attempt of that. That had some fundamental problems in terms of like how output is going to be handled and what information you actually can get from it. It worked well enough, but we wanted to fix those flaws. And so at the beginning of the year, we started more seriously with this new approach, CDK toolkit library. We released a developer preview in February. And end of last month, as of end of last month, this toolkit library is now in GA. You can see the documentation somewhere behind the Slack controls. Move them away. This is the docs page, which has everything you need to get started. There's a README, which gives like a very quick introduction of all the things you can do with it. There is a full command reference, full type reference for everything. And we also have a registry of the messages and payloads. I'm going to come back to that in a second. So today in this demo, I want to take you through a basic scenario of one of the things you could do with the toolkit library. So for this one, we're basically doing the scenario of a integration test, of custom integration test. So we want to deploy a very simple app that basically just has a Lambda function as a demo. And then we're going to use the outputs from our deployment to get the ARN, the ARN of that Lambda function, and then make an API call to this Lambda function as like a fake integration test, basically. We see the results from that. And then because it's an integration test environment, we're going to clean it up afterwards. And this is all going to be done in one script. So the toolkit library is obviously a little bit different to the CLI. We want to go into the code now. So the first thing you need to do is you need to set up your toolkit instance. And this is basically the place where you're going to configure all of your global options and settings. Like the most important one, for example, would be authentication and access to credentials. So by default, the toolkit library is going to use the same credential setup that the CLI does. So it's trying to read your .aws files and trying to get the stuff from there. But if you wanted to have a more unique, like customized setup, there is a way to pass like in credentials as well. Then the next thing is we need to define what our CDK app is. And the main way you might be using this is by using an existing app. So you can call this from CDK app thing, and you're going to give it a string, which is your app call, which is something that currently you would have in your CDK.json file. And this can be any existing app that you have. It can be a Node app, but also like you see here, it can be a Python app. But today I'm only going to be using something else, which is a new low-level primitive, which is the assembly builder. So the assembly builder is basically, it just takes a function that then returns a cloud assembly, and you could do anything with it that you like behind the scenes. And that's kind of like what this from CDK app is doing as well, really. But one of the things that allows you to do is like it allows you to do nicely inline CDK apps. And so for this demo, it's really convenient because I can just define our closer function here, and we have an app. I have a stack that I'm going to show you in a second, and then I synth the app and return that, and that's it. Then the next step we're going to do is we will synthesize the app. That's something that you're very familiar with when you're using the CDK CLI. We have the CDK synth command, and that's basically that as well, right? And the main reason we're doing this here is because once we synthesize it, we can reuse the already synthesized cloud assembly for all the steps we want to do further on. So we can reuse this for deployment, but also for the destroy call later on. And that basically just saves us on synth time. So we don't have to re-synthesize this app every single time we want to do something with it. If you're confused about the way to using syntax here, that's a brand new JavaScript and TypeScript feature. It's available in TypeScript. I think it got ECMAScript approval this week or last week, and might be coming into your favorite programming language very soon. Really what this is doing is that there are some resources attached to this cloud assembly, for example, the directory, that can be cleaned up automatically once this script is finished. So don't get confused by that, basically. When the app is synthesized, so we have converted our app into what we call a cloud assembly. We call this CX for short, and we can give this cloud assembly to our deploy command. And there's a bunch of properties and settings you can have. And this is like all the stuff you might be familiar with from the CLI. Some of the things might be a bit renamed, but it's like all of the familiar things that you have there. But by default, you don't need to give it anything. You can just run deploy and it will work. I can also type app here. That would also work. But again, then I would have to resynthesize the app every single time I use it. So I'm going to use the CX here. And then this is where the magic happens here. It's like because we are getting the deployment result back, we can inspect the output of this deployment result. So in this case, we're going to get stacks. We're selecting the first one, and we're looking at the output of that name. And then we can use this function arn to send the payload, which I'm going to show you in a second. Then there's just some basic stuff about validating whether the payload is our expected data. Again, we're simulating an integration test here. And then finally, once everything is done, we're going to destroy this app again. So on the right-hand side, I'm going to start calling this demo app. And that's just going to run in the background because it's going to deploy a stack. So while we're doing this, I'm just going to look at this stack with you here. Payload check stack. This is a simple CDK stack that has a single Lambda function. The inline code is basically checking the event for certain input. And then it's either responding OK or error message back based on the input. And then we add this arn of the function as an output so we can access it. Right. So this went quicker than because I didn't destroy my stack last time before the demo. Well, there we go. Anyway, you can already see like this is output that you might be very familiar with from the CDK itself. I think one of the things that is worth pointing out here is that this synth command by default goes into like a temporary folder. You can point it to cdk.out. That's also fine. And then we deployed, nothing has changed. And here's our output. And now this should the integration test question comes up, which is really just this Lambda payload question here. So I'm going to say fail first, just to show you the error message. Woo, okay, now we've caught a problem in our integration test, and we could, I guess, intercheck the error message and post an issue on GitHub or like respond to whatever system you have internally. I'm going to run it again. And this time I'm going to say pass, and then we should see the success message. And we should also see that the stack is going to be destroyed. Right, so pass the integration test. This is just sending the expected payload. Whoa, we're getting a success message back here. And you can see how the deletion is now going to be happening in progress. Now, so one of the things that I do want to call out is that I said before, like this output is pretty much like the same as the CLI. And there's a reason for that, because the CLI and the toolkit library share the same code base, and they also share most of the output functionality. However, there's like one important thing that we wanted to try to achieve with the toolkit library is that we wanted to separate the actions from the interactions. So we wanted to split out the action of deploying a stack and the interactions that happen in the CLI and rightfully happen in the CLI, like printing output or maybe having a progress bar or checking whether you really want to deploy. Are you really, really sure? Those kind of things. You want to split those out. And we did that through a concept that we are dubbed IO host. And so the toolkit instance here is taking an IO host instance. And by default, it's basically a non-interactive version of what the CLI is having or is offering in your CLI when you use the CLI. But the CLI is doing the same thing. It's just very interactive. You get like fancy output like a progress bar. And sometimes we ask you questions. And the toolkit library by default is never going to ask you any questions. It's always going to assume yes or the moving forward answer. And it's not going to do any fancy shell output as well. But the cool thing is that you can customize this this IO host thing, right? So you might not like that your integration test gives you all this nonsense output, for example, right? Because it's quite busy, and maybe you're really just interested in whether it works or not. So I have written a special demo IO host for this demo here, and there's two things really to look out for. The one thing is that we don't log anything unless it's an error, which we hopefully don't encounter. And then the other thing is that we do actually want to have a decision point if we want to delete the stack afterwards and clean up our environment. So if I run this now with the new IO host, you're going to see nothing, because that's what we want. We don't want to see any logs anymore. So this is going to do something in the background now without not knowing what's going on. And hopefully, if it works, I will. This is going to take longer now as well, because I just destroyed the stack. But if it works, I'm going to get the question for the integration test input in a second. Now, while we're waiting here, I can talk to you about those messages here. So every message, so basically the toolkit emits messages, and those messages end up in the IO host, and then you, as the implementer, have an opportunity to do something with this message. Normally, you would just log it, but some messages are special and have a code. And those are basically messages you can react to. And you don't need to know what all those codes mean, but you can go on the website, on our documentation page, on this message registry. It's a tongue twister. And go and look up what this means. So I can search for 7010 here. And this is like confirm destroy stacks, right? So this is kind of like how it works. And then there's an interface that you can link to, and you see what kind of information you get in that. So all of those messages have a description and a payload, and you can depend on them to build your own interaction for your use case. Right, so let's pass the integration test, not here. And now we're getting the second question, which is the stuff that we built up here. Is now being asked whether we want to clean up and delete the environment or not. I'm going to say no now, and then we run the demo just to show you that it's going to be much quicker the second time around. And then I can answer the question with yes and have a clean environment. And that's the things that I wanted to show you today. So to wrap this up, we're quite excited about this because we think that it will unlock a lot of custom use cases. We have like integration testing in mind. We have ephemeral environments in mind for that. We know that some of you build custom CLIs. So we hope that you might use the toolkit library to integrate the CDK even deeper in your custom CLIs. But also, something like this could be super cool for something like this, to have a very short demo that's very like self-contained and almost automated, and a tutorial just makes it a bit simpler to show all of those things around. Right, cool. I think that's all of my content.
Thank you, Momo. By the way, first question, I'm sure everybody has this on their mind. Is this code available somewhere for us to look at beyond the screen? Is there a gist? Is there a repo? If there is, could you paste it in the chat or something?
All of this is available.
Excellent.
And I will share the repo.
Thank you, Mo. And folks, by the way, if you have any questions for him about this thing, drop them in the chat or unmute yourself if you want. I do have one question here as well from myself directly. Do you see, well, actually, where do you see this thing being used? I know you mentioned people making custom CLIs. Like, does this belong in a CI/CD pipeline? Is this where you find the most use for this, or is it just during development and whatever kind of other phases?
I don't think that it should be the first point of calling for your CI/CD pipeline, right? The CDK CLI is still your primary option to look at, I would say. I think there are companies, especially if you're looking at the enterprise sector, where your CI/CD needs are just going to be much more complex, right? So I've worked at companies before that have their own system of taking something in and then deploying it, and like you as an engineer don't have access to that, right? So that could be a system where I would see that library being used. So they can now, they were previously limited to do some bash scripting around the CDK CLI, and now they could actually build a high fidelity integration with this.
We did want to quickly also talk about this feature that we are adding called CLI telemetry. And as a product manager, all data is helpful and good. And one of the things that we are trying to understand is how our users are successful on CDK CLI. Where are the pitfalls? Where do users get stuck? And how to prioritize these features? Like all of this data is really helpful in those decisions. So we're adding anonymized telemetry on CDK CLI, and I'd quickly like to invite Ellie, another of our developers on CDK, to talk about what we're adding here and how users can opt out so you have complete control.
All right, cool. Yeah, let me take it off for a few minutes and then we'll continue with Pahud. Let me try and share my screen, see that it works.
Oh no.
Of course. There we go. Look at that.
All right, it works. All good?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do here is just going to kind of walk you through our current artifacts that we have for this feature. And like always in CDK, we operate in public. So there's an RFC for the proposal that you can comment on. We also have already kind of started with some implementation details that you can see in our CDK CLI repo. Regular CDK development in public. You can comment on the code, on the proposal. What I want to do here is not go over code, but just kind of quickly go over the RFC and what we're proposing and the different sections of it. So like Pranita mentioned, we will be adding telemetry for our CDK CLI commands. One of the things is that right now we kind of, it's hard to gauge the actual experience of users when they're using the CLI. It's even hard to kind of count how many users are actually using the CLI. Right now, we're looking at NPM stats, but those, as you know, are not really accurate. They don't give us the granularity that we want. So we're trying to do source better data to make better data-driven decisions. So like Pranita mentioned, we're only going to do anonymized data, anything that is considered user content from an Amazon perspective, from our own perspective. In the RFC, you can see a link to the definition of, go away. I need this more. All right. Now. So this is the definitions that we have in AWS for customer content. And we also have some specific CLI kind of, data that we consider in addition, which is the customer content, and that's all laid out in the RFC. So for example, just kind of quick bird's eye, this is the kind of data that we're going to be sending to our telemetry endpoint. You can see that there's a bunch of identifiers here that we generate for our own. These are just session identifiers, event IDs, and we're sending, for example, that a user ran CDK deploy. Right? You'll notice that we're actually anonymizing the stack names here, so we don't really care about what you named your stack. We just care about the fact that there was maybe 1 or 2 or 3 stacks, right? So that's the kind of data we're sending. We're sending whether or not it was a successful deployment or a failure. We want to be able to see, right, like the experience of users, how much of their commands are successful, how much of they're failing. It's something that can help us understand what to improve. So and also we're going to be sending some log statements and mirror messages. All of this is going to be anonymized and does not contain user content. Now, as far as opt-out mechanisms, you're going to be able to opt out of the telemetry. We're going to have a new CLI command that will give you an option to opt out. As far as the process is concerned, also we're kind of targeting, a while before we actually launch this thing. We're going to put out a notice through our CLI notices mechanism, which I think you're familiar with, and we're going to say this is going to happen at a certain date. We don't have those right now, but we're going to be very clear about when this is going to start happening. and we're going to give instructions on how you can opt out if you want. I'm happy to hear comments on the RFC, whether you will opt out, what are your concerns or suggestions. Yeah, and then there's a section here about the metrics themselves. What are we actually going to be collecting? So we're not going to go over all of it, but things like what is your CLI version? Installation ID is something that will help us keep like a distinct count of users so that we know an estimation of how many distinct users are using the CLI and which commands they're doing. Yeah, event state, like I said, success or failure, the command itself, the parameters, only whether or not the parameter was used, right? We're not going to include the value that you put in the parameter if it's free text, because that's considered customer content. Configuration, some information about your environment, like the operating system that you're on, whether or not you're in a CI/CD environment. That's actually pretty important because there are things to consider when you're in a CI/CD environment, like Momo mentioned, for example, confirmation stuff, features around interactions, feature around integration with external parties. So it'll help us gauge, like if there's a lot of folks using the CDK CLI and CI/CD environments, that will help us facilitate better those types of workflows. And then we have also some statistics that we're going to be collecting, timers around how much time the CLI took for a specific operation. For example, how much time does synthesis take, right? If we see a big spike in synthesis time, that probably means we did something that caused a performance impact we want to be aware of. Error messages will help us catch regressions faster than you can report, hopefully, on GitHub and fix them even maybe before you notice. Yeah, all right. So like I said, customer content, there's a section here to tell you exactly what AWS considers customer content. And in addition, we have our own, based on what the CLI is actually doing, we defined our own set of data that we're going to be sanitizing and anonymizing. So things like error messages, things like ARNs, account IDs, any form of UUID, which can be, for example, SDK call, request IDs, all the type of stuff we're going to be removing. File paths, your local file paths are not going to be sent. Stack names, like I mentioned, essentially, we don't care about those. We only care about the metadata of your deployment and not the actual content. Asset display names is also something that the user that you can control in your CDK app. It can be free text. So we're going to be removing those. Logical IDs of your CDK application, for example, we also don't really care about those. We just care about maybe we care about you're deploying 100 resources, right? So we send maybe that statistic of you just deployed 100 resources. We don't care which one of those, which those are. And arbitrary log messages. So we're not going to be sending. So in your CDK app, like you can write log messages and you can throw exceptions. We're not going to be touching those. We're not going to be sending those. So anything that goes into your CDK app, anything that you've written specifically as a log message or as an error, that's going to be left out. We will be sending our own log messages that are originating from the CDK CLI that we control, that we know exactly how they're structured and what data they include, what data should not be sent, and what is safe to send. Yeah, I think that's basically it. We really welcome. So this RFC is in progress. It's actually pretty close to coming to final comments period. Once it's merged, we're going to start working on that CLI notice that I mentioned for better awareness for all our customers. And yeah, please feel free to still reach out on the RFC or on the CLI commands if you're really interested in the code itself and the CLI repo. And yeah, that's all I had.
Now, next up, we have Pahud here, who's going to be talking to us about how he uses Q CLI, full name, Amazon Q Developer CLI, with the CDK EKS v2 construct. So Pahud, take it away.
Okay, hi, I'm Pahud. My name is Pahud. So you guys probably have seen my name on literally every single GitHub issue every day. So yeah, my name is Pahud Xie. I'm based in New York, and I support AWS CDK team, and I have been around for a few years supporting CDK. And today I'm gonna share something pretty interesting using Amazon QCLI to help you to write something you are not aware of, or you have never heard of, or something pretty new just coming out from CDK team, and how can we figure it out using QCLI. So before we jump into the demo, I would like to introduce three most important MCP model context protocol servers I literally use every day. So first one is GitHub NCP. So GitHub NCP allows you to it's just kind of your eyes. You just open the door for your AI agent to literally access everything on GitHub without switching to GitHub. Allows your current IDE or CLI have the access to all the GitHub public information. And the second one is Fetch NCP. Fetch NCP allows you to literally fetch every public web pages and bring it back to your generative AI context. And the last but not least is the AWS documentations NCP. That is the most important of all in your day-to-day CDK development. So in your CDK development, you definitely would look up, for example, CDK API reference, CDK document, or CDK, even AWS blog post about CDK. So I'm going to demo that later, right? So having the AWS documentations MCP allows you to get all available public AWS documents for you just in place in your current IDE or terminal. Okay, so that is super important. And I actually make it a little bit useful. I created two tools on top of the existing documentations NCP that allows this NCP to search any AWS blog posts and read any blog posts. Okay, so let's talk about the blog post we published last Friday about Amazon EKS v2 alpha module, and it's an amazing feature. We introduced the auto mode for Amazon EKS, which was one of the most important announcement that year we made. So let's assume we haven't read that blog post at all. So what can we do here using terminal, using your favorite CLI, and figure out how to get it deployed? Okay, so let me show you how to do that. Okay, I would say this is the live demo, no rehearsal. So demo God with me, please. Okay. Okay, so let's say, okay, so search AWS blog post about it's actually a last Friday blog post, AWS EKS CDK AWS EKS v2 L2 constructs, right? Constructs and summarize. Let's see what happened next. Okay, as you see, okay, it's gonna search a blog post for CDK AWS EKS v2, and yeah, it found this blog post link, right? This is exactly the blog post we published last week. Okay, so I probably should pass this link in the chat room, but let's assume we haven't read this blog post at all, and I'm not sure how to deploy the v2 EKS, right? So it's now summarizing, but that is not the point. What I really care about is how to deploy a v2. Okay, maybe I'm super curious about what is the advantage v2 over v1, right? Given we have v2, there definitely has some advantage v2 over v1. Okay, of course I can ask AI tell me the advantage. But now let's say okay, so given this block content, search AWS EKS v2 alpha on AWS CDK GitHub. Show me how to create a minimal, let's say EKS cluster supporting auto mode running in my default VPC Okay, this is very interesting. So let's say I haven't read any blog post. I haven't read a README, but I really want to get it deployed. I have AI, I have QCOI, I have Clause 4 Sonnet, which is awesome. I have my favorite VS Code here. I haven't read any blog post or API reference. So let's see what's gonna happen. Okay, so what's happening here is okay, it's now using the GitHub NCP to search code from where? From AWS CDK GitHub repository. And in this module, which is the alpha module, that's awesome. So and then it tried to look at source code of this cluster.TypeScript under the V2 alpha module, and then read the README from that alpha module. And of course, it has read the blog post, right? So now it's now because we have an instruction, hey, you have to tell me how to deploy EKS in my default VPC. So it's gonna query, is there any VPC lookup sample with that cluster provision, and find out and try to find the try to reference some existing unit tests. So this is a unit test, right? I haven't read that unit test at all. So what's happening here is your AI agent doing everything it could to look at the blog post, API reference, README, source code, unit tests, and eventually propose potential code snippets for you. Yeah. And then it probably, okay, so I probably don't need that, I want to make it simple, right? Make it very simple. So I probably can just say stop, make it super simple and a tiny sample in TypeScript. Okay, then it will just help you to write up a very, very tiny simple that's deploy. And of course, you probably have no idea what is the latest Kubernetes version supported in EKS, right? It's proposing 1.32, but Amazon EKS actually supported 1.33. So you have no idea if 1.33 is already supported in EKS, right? You can just ask him. Ask it. Okay, so please help me check if 1.33 already supported in EKS Alpha module. If yes, let's just go for 1.33. Okay, so you can interact with it like that. And if everything just looks good, then okay, you can just say, okay, update my current CDK code and get it deployed. Okay, so what's happening here is the CLI will analyze your current code base. So you have the EKS demo stack, which literally is an empty stack, right? So it's gonna read your current code assets and propose an update for you. Okay, it's reading your package JSON, right? Okay, so this takes a while, but okay, after analyzing your current code base, it will figure out, okay, your project structure and propose a code change in your current code base. And then it will just run the CDK deploy for you to get it deployed. Okay, so you can just say trust. I trust.
So Pahud, while this is happening, so all of this information that it's kind of knowing which specific version to use, and it gathered that information by using the AWS Docs MCP and the GitHub MCP.
Yeah.
So that's a key thing here, right? It's not just using its own internal knowledge that's stored in the Claude 4 model here, but it's picking up those things and it's able to get you up to date information.
Yeah. So this takes a while. So I'm not gonna go through all the demo. This takes a while.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna show you that, okay, you just need 3 very important NCP: AWS Documents NCP, GitHub NCP, and optionally a fetch NCP that allows you to fetch any public web page. And using that NCP in your favorite AI IDE or agent that will allows you to, literally, to get all the latest document or API reference or blog post information, putting them together, and then help you to very quickly to prototype a CDK application, or help you to debug or troubleshooting some existing error, because it can look at all the CDK code base, find out the root cause of the failure, and propose a solution to you. So that is super helpful for day-to-day CDK development. Okay. So I just make it short, make it simple, just like this, and we welcome all feedback, and definitely we would love to share more tips like this with the community.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Pahud. We're going to move on to the next demo from Danny here. Just to answer a quick question to tech with LC. Is there any security concerns with behind using MCPs? Only use MCPs that you trust. That's going to be my biggest takeaway from this. Don't just take a random MCP you've never seen, used, or verified. But otherwise, you should be okay. Thank you, Pahud, so much. Danny, can we get you to show us your wonderful CDK starter kit demo?
Yes, sure. Let me see. All right. It's probably very wide, but hopefully it's visible.
Yes, so it is visible. Well, Command plus is a couple of times on both windows. At least on my single laptop screen, I cannot see your code. So thank you. That's a lot
better.
Yes. It should be uncomfortable for you. It should be comfortable for us.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, because I need to switch
Thanks.
screens a lot, so it's a bit hard, I guess, to stop sharing and switch switch applications, I guess. But I'll try to do my best here. So yeah, basically, there's a nice bridge from the first talk demo about the toolkit. Basically, I've been building a starter kit mostly to itch my own scratch. I'm a freelance cloud engineer, and I've been working for a lot of different clients on AWS, and most of the time I work with AWS CDK. However, I need to start a lot of greenfield projects from scratch, and therefore, I was looking into a solution on sort of boilerplating my code in order to get started pretty quickly. And that's a bit how the AWS CDK starter kit got born. It's an open source project. You can fork it, you can clone it, you can do whatever you wish with it. And basically, the foundation is Progen. I guess Progen became pretty popular in the community when it first got released. Progen is basically a tool or framework that allows you to manage your project configuration via code. And basically, we'll get right into that. So here on the left-hand side, we have the Progen file. Basically, you have a single configuration file that allows you to configure your whole repository and your CDK app in this case. So I'm using this for every CDK app that I spin up and build from. And basically I've set up some best practices for myself, some things that I need to repeat. So I have a very comprehensive configuration set up. Over time, it got iterated, of course. So I started building from small and then added more options later down the road and applied all my learnings. So as you can see, what Progen does is it allows you to set up some default configurations. So it contains a plethora of options. To give you an example, you can set up like your prettier formatting for your code. You can set up linting with ESLint. Basically, what it does underneath is it sets up these files, right? So as you can see from the prettier configuration in Progen, it generates these configuration files. You cannot modify these directly. You have to manage that via Progen. So it's sort of already set up a guardrail, and it allows you to not, especially if you're working with multiple team members on a similar project. Over time, you'll notice that your configuration of every repository that you work on starts to drift. And using Progen, it allows you to stay on the same lane. So over time, I expanded upon this. So this is not like a regular project, basically, to kickstart your CDK. However, I managed to set up ephemeral environments using GitHub Actions. So basically, what the CDK toolkit that was announced earlier that also supports ephemeral environments now. This is something that I've built and combined using Progen and set it up using GitHub Actions. So a majority of my project use GitHub. So I'll give you an example. So what I'll have to do is, this is like the most important part of the whole Progen configuration, to set up your CI/CD and your Progen tasks to run the CDK commands. So basically, what happens here is you set up your account ID. You can enable branch deployments to enable ephemeral environments. So what I'll do now is I'll just enable, for example, I've added the test AWS account. I want to set up my deployment CI/CD and enable branch deployments. So basically, in order to change your configuration in Progen, you need to run the Progen command. As you can see, it does a lot of things on the background. So see a lot of changes in my code. So it's what it did basically is it generated and updated these. In this case, it generated the GitHub action workflows. So because we've added a new environment, it automatically creates these GitHub workflow files. It's configured from everything that you've put in there. So it adds an IAM role to assume, which we've deployed earlier. I'll show you that in a minute. And it adds these actions in order to synthesize and then deploy your CDK app on your target environment. It's saying, because I've enabled branches, it will enable and create ephemeral environments. These are based on branch basing. So it automatically runs and triggers on branches other than hotfix, main, etc. You can also manually run these branches. So if you create a new branch, you commit and push, it will automatically run this workflow, and it will deploy a separate CDK stack isolated on the same target environment based on your branch changes. So it automatically creates these files. It also adds these tasks. These tasks contain all the information that you need in order to deploy to your target environment. So I've set up the region, the account ID. Another thing is I've added the environment name, so the stage name. And that is important because you can make, for example, if you have like a resource, like a bucket, for example, and you want to set up like a destroy policy on it, you can enable it only for production, for example, and for your test and your staging environment, you can disable that. So that's where you can apply this environment. So let me give you a brief demo. So first up, what else does it contain? So this starter kit contains 2 stacks. basically we have a foundation stack, and your foundation stack sets up all the required resources in order for you to automatically connect your GitHub actions. So we set up a safe connection. So we set up an OpenID provider, and we automatically create the trust relationship based on your repository. So what does it look like? If I switch back to the console, so I've already deployed this foundation stack because it takes a couple of minutes. But if we open it, and let me see, I'll zoom in a little bit more. You have a couple of resources. So what we deployed is the OpenID Connect provider, the GitHub Action Service role, as it's called. And this is going to be assumed by the GitHub Actions. So we have the permission, of course, in order to be able to deploy. We have the trust relationship. So basically, it automatically fills in condition. So it only allows this repository, which is the demo repository, including this environment. So in this case, for the demo, I created the sandbox environment. Basically, on the left-hand side, that is this environment with branch-based deployments enabled. It only allows this repository to set up this environment in GitHub Actions. So if we want to run it, so I've already set up the requirements. We only have to deploy this once per account, of course, because we need to set up, we need to allow this repository to deploy on the target account. If we go to the GitHub Actions, go to Actions, and then I'll just deploy to Sandbox. I'll go from main in this case. We'll trigger the deploy, and it will run the actions that were already created from this project file. So everything is already set up and pre-configured. Now it sets up the AWS credentials. It uses OIDC, and is exactly the role that we've deployed with the foundation stack. So we only have to configure that once and per target environment, per AWS account, and then we can automatically deploy. So now it runs a synth command, synthesize your stack, and then it deploys all my stacks. And to give a bit of a brief overview, this project comes with two stacks, which is the foundation stack and the starter stack. And this is where people need to start adding their own resources. So you can, included like one example, which is like a network construct, which contains a VPC with an S3 bucket for your flow logs. However, this is also the fun part. You can set up ternary operators to distinguish between different environments. Because, for example, a VPC requires, especially if you want to connect them with each other, right? You require different CIDR blocks, so you can distinguish between different environments, which block you're going to give out. This is what parts of that comes included out of the box with this project, with this repository. So as you can see, we deployed all our stuff. It also automatically names our stacks, adds the environment name next to it. Why? This is very important because once we want to start adding the ephemeral environments, you cannot overlap the name, otherwise it will overwrite the same stack, right? So I'll show you that here. So let me see, I'll open up terminal again. So let me switch branch. So now we're on the main branch. We did the deploy, so we have two stacks now. Now we're going to switch the branch. Let me see, check out, created the, let me see, need to discard all my changes. Here we go. Yeah, so basically, in this branch, I've added, let me see. I've added a new construct, just as an example, which is a storage construct, which contains a bucket. I've included a method in the construct itself, which is called unique. And it also, because an S3 bucket is a stateful resource, which requires like a unique identifier, a name in this case, because it needs to be globally unique. And so I've added like storage bucket, and then it adds my account ID. But because I've added this method in front of it, it will also automatically append the branch name. So I'll show you that now. So here we go. So in order to do a deploy, it will automatically fetch the branch name. So we have npm run commands that were generated by Progen, which I've shown earlier. So it's called branch. In this case, it's the sandbox environment. So we have the sandbox staging and production, but in this case, we have the sandbox environment, and then we do a deploy all. It will deploy all the stacks that are in the app. In this case, it's only one stack though, but so what it will do now is it will automatically fetch the branch name that I have, which is the feed called feed demo, and it will apply that automatically to the template or the stack in this case. And as you can see, it's already in progress. So it grabs the demo name, it appends it to the stack. Well, it's running. And let me check. So we have the bucket in here. Let's open up the bucket. And as you can see, it created the bucket and it appended the name. So now we can, well, create more and more branch-based deployments and or ephemeral environments in this case. So it solves a lot of issues if you're working with a lot of team members. We used to have a lot of conflicts in the past, where like engineer one is deploying his branch on the same environment. So for let's say a test environment, and then the other engineer is also trying to deploy in the same environment, which is annoying. So you override your resources while you're developing, which is quite annoying. And now you can create unlimited stacks on the same environment, using these methods, so you don't have any issues. Of course, the best practice would be to do it on a separate account, but it's not always doable, right? So this is sometimes you have limitations from the organization or some other limitations. So this is like a good method to develop and increase your velocity. And of course the last bit. So once you're done, of course, for example, you set up a pull request, you merge your changes to main, it will automatically destroy this branch-based deployment as well. Or if you delete the branch, it will also trigger this workflow, and you can also do it manually. So in this case, I'll do it manually because I don't want to destroy my branch in Git. But so basically now it's triggered. So after you're done developing and you've merged your changes, it will also automatically destroy your stack and your changes. So it will clean up nicely, and you're good to go. So everybody's happy, hopefully, and then you can continue with your next feature branch.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you so much. Folks, there's a link in the chat to the repo. Make sure to go ahead and check it out and give it a star. Excellent. Thank you so much for the demo. Thanks, everybody, for the demos here. I think before we wrap up, because we're kind of getting over time now, definitely want to go ahead and answer a question. Anybody have a question we could answer to you right now? Take it up here, because I do believe we've responded to a bunch of questions, but no time like the present to ask right now. And there's a link to the feedback, to the survey thing. Yes.
I think Matt has his hands up.
Okay, Matt.
No, I just want to shamelessly promote the CDK. No, so I was curious. The programmatic thing is really interesting because we tried in the past of using something like a Lambda function to try to do a lot of CDK work using the CLI, and it was a nightmare. So, as you guys explored this, has there been either an example, reference, anything like that that would guide somebody on how to use the CDK toolkit from within a Lambda function to be doing all of this work? Because ideally, what I'd love to do is slap an MCP server in front of that and then use that as a AI-driven way of managing resources within AWS while still maintaining good IAC in place.
It runs in a Lambda function. I don't have a reference architecture for you, if that's what you're asking, but it definitely runs in a Lambda function, and you can import it as a TypeScript library and then bundle it up in any way you see fit. So I think, that's definitely one of the use cases we had in mind for people to work with. So yeah, that will be. I like this MCP server idea. There's a task on my backlog somewhere of making the MCP server a bit more aware of it. But actually connecting it to your stack, to your own account that way, that's a really good idea as well.
Hit me up on that because I've got some questions for you on that and some directions and some things I want to talk to you about that.
Chat.
Definitely an opportunity for a piece of content here. So
yeah, that's kind of where I was leaning on this.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Shout outs to the CDK book. Amazing.
And my advanced CDK course video series available at matthewbonick.com.
Plug bonanza here. I love it.
Well, I got to get, my goal is to sell at least one course per month that I haven't hit in June yet. So,
Put the link in here.
Yeah, feel to drop the link in the chat. Amazing.
Okay, will do.
Well, thank you, folks. Any more questions? Feel free to raise your hand here or just drop a question in the chat before we wrap up. Pranita, do we know when the next one is, the next meetup?
Yeah, so we have one at 8 p.m. New York, 5 p.m. Seattle today. So that would be for the rest of the world to catch up on. And we are planning the next session. We want to do these quarterly. So we want to have really valuable demos. I don't have a date for you yet, but I will have a GitHub issue and communication on the CDK channel on the next one. But yeah, it should be after summer.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Folks, check out the GitHub issue, join the CDK Slack workspace, and thank you so much. Yeah, we will definitely try to keep a regular cadence on this. I do like it. I do love the demos. I think we either need more time for these things or do less demos, but one of those two. Amazing. Thank you so much, folks. Have a good day. Have a good rest of the week. And thank you for joining us for this first community thingy. Bye.
Bye.